Greetings, 2012 intern trekkers. My name is Andrea Emerson, and I will be directing the outreach that we will be doing on campus in Santa Barbara at the beginning of our trek. And in order to prepare for that as a community, even though we're in different locations at this point, I am going to share with you the version of the Four Circles gospel diagram that we will be using in Santa Barbara. A lot of you are probably familiar with the Four Circles, but I'm going to model doing it today with some of the language that actually fits from the proxy station that we will be running on campus that day. So my assignment for you between now and the intern trek is that you will, A, watch this little video, and then B, that you will attempt to share the Four Circles using the language that I'm going to teach you with a non-Christian. So you get some practice doing this so that when we arrive on the day of the outreach in Santa Barbara, we're ready to go and we feel a little more comfortable with some of this language. So I need you to imagine with me that I've just led somebody through the proxy station, and the last panel of the proxy before the gospel diagram that I'll share is a paraphrased version of the prodigal son story. So the pretend person that I've been sharing the proxy with has read that story, and I have asked them if they want to hear what the Bible has to say about God restoring our identity and being in right relationship with Him. And for purposes of this demonstration, our pretend person has said, yes, tell me what the Bible has to say about that. So we're going to pick up there. Okay, so I'm going to use this diagram to explain what the Bible says about God restoring our relationship with Him and transforming our identity in the process. So we're going to start over here with circle 2. So like the son in the story that we just read that Jesus tells, we want to make a name for ourselves. We want to find our identity apart from God. But in doing that, we place our needs and our kind of selfish desires at the center of the story, which may not sound all that bad, but the reality is that my selfishness, when it's combined with the selfishness of lots of other people in the world, has the capacity to hurt a lot of people and to hurt myself in the process. So, big picture, we can see that playing out all over the world anytime we turn on the news. War, famine, poverty, racism, all kinds of oppression, environmental pollution, slavery. It was startling to me to learn that there are more slaves now in the world than at any other point in human history. So somebody's benefiting from the selfishness of other people, right? It's actually enslaving people around the world. So our selfishness, big picture, combined with other people's selfishness, leaves us in a pretty big mess, which is represented by this circle. But the reality is it's not just the big picture that we see selfishness playing out, it's also on a personal scale. So if I were to be honest with you, one of the ways I see my selfishness playing out is that a lot of my time and energy goes into being concerned with how I'm being perceived by other people. Am I being well liked? Am I being impressive? I want to get ahead. I want people to notice me, so I'm jockeying for position to try to make that happen. And when my time and energy is going to that, I actually don't have a lot of time to care about people around me. So my selfishness actually ends up hurting other people when I'm consumed with myself, a little bit self-absorbed. So I'm curious about you. What are the things that you would identify in the world where you see selfishness playing out on a big scale, or maybe even personally? Would you be willing to share that with me? Pause at this point, would let the person respond, and then you would re-engage in conversation. Yeah, I relate to a lot of what you're sharing. I'm concerned about those things as well. And I find myself longing for something better. I find myself wishing that this were not the state of the world. I think we all long for something better. But some of that dissatisfaction, we have to be willing to wrestle with the fact that if we've put ourselves at the center of the story, if our selfishness is the center of it, then every day we're contributing to the brokenness around us as our selfishness gets multiplied. But this is not the picture that God wanted. This is not the story He wanted. He never intended for our selfishness to be the center of the story. He actually had a much better plan, which is represented over here by circle 1. So God actually designed us for incredible intimacy and trust and relationship with Him and with other people and with the world around us. We were created to be happy and courageous and authentic rather than fake, boring, or selfish. We were designed for good, and we were designed to be in right relationship with God, to actually have our identity not come from selfish things, but from a loving relationship with God. That's what he intended. But then we got this great idea. We said, God, we think we can do it better. We actually don't want you and relationship with you to be the center of the story. We're going to choose this way. We rejected God and pushed him out of the way. And really, if this is what we've chosen, then it wouldn't be that surprising if God left us to wallow in the mess we've created. But, surprisingly, that's not the story the Bible goes on to share. The Bible actually tells us that God decided to place himself in the middle of our broken world. He actually wasn't satisfied with us finding our identities in relationships or achievement or the thing we're majoring in. He wanted something better for us. So he came as the person of Jesus to offer a path for restored relationship with the Father. In order to do that, God had to deal with the heart condition that leads to this mess, right? The selfishness is at the center of it. So when he came as Jesus, he decided to take on the shame and the pain from our rejection of God and deal with the hurt that caused God and caused us. So Jesus knew that his selfless death would absorb our selfishness. He didn't make us pay for it. He paid for it himself. But not only that, he rose from the dead to prove that new life is possible if we want to be back in relationship with God. His death and resurrection provides the pathway for us to be adopted back into God's family. But that leaves us with a choice. We have to decide, will we admit our selfishness that caused the problem? And will we admit that we want to be back in relationship with the Father? Will we accept Jesus' pathway for reconciliation, for homecoming with the Father? And if we do that, we actually discover that the transformation in our identity to being sons and daughters of God again, it isn't just for us. God's love isn't just for me or for you. It actually extends to the whole world. So as we are experiencing becoming part of God's family, we actually become concerned with the things our Father cares about. So he sends us out with his Spirit to actually bring the message that relationship with God is possible, that our identity can be restored. We're sent out to seek people who are doing life on their own, to share with them that actually a different life is possible. You don't have to find your identity in all these other things. Your identity can be found in relationship with God through Jesus. So we're sent out with this message. We become part of God's mission. And in that process, in essence, he makes us into world changers, which is the thing that a lot of us have identified as wanting to become more of. So after hearing this, I'd like to know about you. What would it take for you to admit your selfishness, to let Jesus adopt you back into God's family, and to send you out with hope to heal a broken world? What would that take, and what's stopping you from making that choice? All right, well, now you've seen the gospel diagram using some of the language from the proxy we'll be doing on the trek. So get out there and practice this. And my encouragement is to come up with your own examples of personal selfishness that you would share. Also, come up with the example of an issue in the world where you see selfishness playing out on a big scale. Pick the one that you're most concerned about so that you can actually share honestly with the person you end up talking to. But I look forward to doing some outreach with all of you in July, so I will see you in just a few weeks. Thanks.